The crowded high school hallway buzzed with life as students rushed to their lockers, exchanged banter, and prepared for another day of classes. Amid the chaos, there was always one figure who stood out, though not for reasons anyone would wish. Marcus, a quiet and reserved sophomore, moved through the crowd like a ghost. His dark skin, sharp features, and worn clothes made him a target in a school where differences were often met with cruelty. It began as it always did, a snicker, a whispered comment just loud enough to be heard. "Hey Marcus, is that the same shirt you wore yesterday?" a voice called out. The speaker, Trent, was the golden boy of the school, captain of the basketball team, son of a wealthy family, and the unofficial ruler of their small suburban high school. Marcus ignored him, keeping his head down. "Yo, Marcus, don't ignore me," Trent shouted, stepping closer. "Or is that just what your people do? Stay quiet and blend in, huh?" The hallway erupted in laughter. This wasn't the first time Marcus had endured such taunts. Since his first day at Riverview High, he had been an easy target. As one of the few black students in a predominantly white school, Marcus was constantly reminded of his otherness. But what stung more than the jokes were the bystanders, his classmates, teachers, and even supposed friends, who said nothing. Marcus had learned to endure, to let the words wash over him like rain. But something about this morning felt different. As he reached his locker, his hands shook with barely suppressed anger. For years, he had swallowed his pain, telling himself it would get better. But it never did. The taunts followed Marcus into the classroom. Trent and his posse sat in the back, laughing and throwing crumpled paper balls at him when the teacher wasn't looking. Marcus ignored them, walking silently to his seat. At one point, Trent leaned forward, his voice dripping with mockery. "Hey Marcus, did you do the math homework? Oh wait, I forgot. You probably don't even have a calculator at home." The class erupted into laughter again, but Marcus didn't react. Instead, he clenched his fists under the desk, his nails digging into his palms. The laughter rang in his ears as he stared blankly at his desk. That afternoon, during gym class, things escalated. The students were playing basketball, and Marcus, as usual, was picked last. He stood awkwardly by the sidelines, waiting for his turn. When Marcus finally got the ball, he dribbled past two players and went for a layup. "Not today!" Trent shouted, shoving Marcus hard midair. Marcus crashed to the ground, his knees scraping against the rough surface. "Oops, my bad," Trent said with a smirk. Laughter echoed in the gym, but this time Marcus didn't just sit there. He stood up slowly, his eyes locking with Trent's. For a moment, Trent's smirk faltered, but then he laughed it off, turning back to the game. Marcus limped to the bench, his heart pounding. The humiliation burned deeper than ever. That evening, Marcus sat alone in his room, staring at the ceiling. His mom worked long hours at the hospital, and his dad had passed away years ago. The empty house was eerily silent. His desk was cluttered with notebooks, school supplies, and a small stack of books on coding and engineering, his passion. He had always been drawn to problem-solving, to figuring out how things worked. He glanced at the cracked mirror across the room. "They think they're untouchable," Marcus muttered under his breath. His reflection seemed to glare back at him, a silent partner in his growing resolve. He pulled out his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he began to piece together a plan. Over the next few weeks, Marcus kept a low profile, enduring Trent's taunts in silence. His expression was unreadable, but behind the scenes, he was working tirelessly. The quiet build-up to his plan had begun. Marcus's first move was gathering information. He hacked into the school's Wi-Fi system, accessing network logs and uncovering Trent's online activity. What he found shattered Trent's image of perfection. What he discovered was surprising. Trent wasn't as perfect as he seemed. Late-night gambling sites, questionable social media interactions, even a series of private messages mocking his own teammates were among the files Marcus unearthed. But Marcus didn't stop there. He began observing Trent's daily routine, noting his habits, his interactions, and the moments when he let his guard down. One day, while everyone else was at lunch, Marcus slipped into the locker room. Using a small device he had built, he managed to clone Trent's phone, giving him access to all his messages and apps. It started small, Anonymous emails containing screenshots of Trent's cruel messages began circulating. The messages revealed how Trent belittled them behind their backs, questioning their skills and mocking their personal lives. At first, Trent brushed it off, laughing and calling it a prank. But when his teammates began confronting him, their trust shattered. The cracks in his facade began to show. Then came the videos. A series of clips featuring Trent making racist and derogatory remarks surfaced on social media. The videos quickly went viral within the school, sparking outrage. Trent's popularity plummeted. Teachers called him in for meetings, his teammates avoided him, and even his closest friends began to distance themselves. But Marcus wasn't done. One morning, Trent woke up to find his car vandalized. Spray painted across the side were the words, "How does it feel to be the target?" Panic set in. Trent began suspecting everyone around him, but no one came forward. Meanwhile, Marcus watched from the shadows, feeling a grim sense of satisfaction. For the first time, Trent was experiencing what it felt like to be humiliated, to feel powerless. But Marcus knew this was only the beginning. He wasn't just seeking revenge. He was sending a message. The quiet halls of Riverview High were now abuzz with gossip. Trent's fall from grace was the talk of the school. The videos of him spewing racist remarks had not only spread among students, but had also reached their parents and teachers. Some teachers looked at him with disappointment, others with quiet disapproval, but none had Trent's back anymore. His teammates, once loyal followers, turned on him. During practice, they refused to pass him the ball, muttering insults under their breath. The coach benched him indefinitely, claiming it was for the good of the team. The popular girls who used to hang around Trent were no longer interested in being seen with him. His reputation, once golden, was tarnished beyond repair. Marcus walked the hallways unnoticed, a quiet observer of Trent's unraveling. The once confident bully now walked with his head down, his swagger gone. Trent's arrogance had been replaced with paranoia. Marcus wasn't done yet. His goal wasn't just to humiliate Trent, but to force him to feel the pain and isolation Marcus had endured for years. But as he watched Trent's downfall, Marcus felt a strange sensation. A part of him reveled in the justice of it all, but another part, a quieter, more conflicted part, wondered if he was going too far. At first, Trent tried to play it cool. He confronted his former friends, demanding to know who was behind the leaks. "You think it's funny to stab me in the back?" Trent snarled at one of his teammates during lunch. "Funny," the boy replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "No, Trent. What's funny is watching you finally get what you deserve." Trent's paranoia intensified. He began to lash out at anyone who even looked at him the wrong way. One afternoon, he stormed into the principal's office, accusing the school of not protecting him. "This is harassment," Trent shouted, slamming his fist on the desk. "Someone is out to get me, and you're just standing by letting it happen." The principal, a stern woman with years of experience dealing with high school drama, sighed. "Trent, you need to understand something," she said. "This didn't come out of nowhere. Actions have consequences." Her words echoed in Trent's mind as he stormed out of the office. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him, someone who knew all his secrets. Late one night, Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. The files he had collected on Trent were neatly organized, but he knew he couldn't stop there. He wanted Trent to understand the weight of his actions. Using his technical skills, Marcus hacked into the school's email system. He crafted an anonymous message and sent it to the entire student body. To those who think they can bully without consequences, remember this: karma always finds a way. The email spread like wildfire. Students whispered about it in class, speculating about who could have sent it. Trent's name was on everyone's lips, and the email only deepened his paranoia. The pressure became unbearable for Trent. He began skipping classes, avoiding the cafeteria, and spending most of his time alone. His grades plummeted, and his parents were furious. One night, as Trent lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. "How does it feel to be on the other side?" Trent sat up, his heart pounding. He quickly typed back, "Who is this? What do you want?" No reply came. The next day, he found a small note taped to his locker. "TikTok Trent. Time's running out. Marcus had expected Trent to fight back, to lash out publicly. But instead, Trent withdrew into himself. Marcus began to notice the toll his actions were taking. Trent's once pristine appearance was disheveled. His eyes, once filled with arrogance, now darted nervously, scanning for invisible threats. For the first time, Marcus felt a pang of doubt. Was this enough? Had he crossed the line from justice into cruelty? But then he remembered the years of torment, the humiliation, the laughter, the way people like Trent had made him feel small and insignificant. This isn't just for me, Marcus muttered to himself. It's for everyone they've hurt. Just as Marcus was beginning to feel in control, something unexpected happened. A group of students, emboldened by Trent's downfall, began targeting him. They left notes in Marcus's locker, mocking him for being too smart for his own good and calling him names. Marcus realized that while Trent had been the leader of the bullying, he wasn't the only one responsible. There was a deeper culture of cruelty at Riverview High, one that couldn't be dismantled by taking down a single person. Marcus, a black, quiet, and reserved sophomore, got bullied by other students. His dark skin, sharp features, and worn clothes made him a target in a school where differences were often met with cruelty. It began as it always did, a snicker, a whispered comment just loud enough to be heard. Trent, the smart white student, was the golden boy of the school, captain of the basketball team, son of a wealthy family, and the unofficial ruler of their small suburban high school. Marcus knew he had to adapt his plan. He couldn't stop at Trent. To truly make a difference, he had to expose the broader issues within the school, the systemic bullying, the indifference of the staff, and the way bystanders allowed cruelty to thrive. Late one night, Marcus began compiling a new set of files. This time, his target wasn't just one person. It was the entire system. Meanwhile, Trent reached his breaking point. He began obsessively searching for the person behind his downfall, convinced it was one of his former friends. He confronted people in the hallways, his voice trembling with desperation. "You think this is funny? Ruining my life?" Trent shouted at one of his former teammates. "Your life's ruined because of you, not us," the boy replied coldly. Trent's anger boiled over. One afternoon, he cornered Marcus in the library. "You think I don't see what's going on?" Trent hissed, his voice low and threatening. "I know it's you." Marcus stared at him, his expression calm. "What are you talking about?" he replied evenly. But inside, Marcus's heart raced. He knew the confrontation was inevitable, but he wasn't ready for it to happen so soon. The air between Marcus and Trent was electric with tension as they faced off in the library. Trent's eyes darted around, as if expecting someone to jump out and confirm his suspicions. But Marcus, calm on the outside, maintained his poker face. "You think you're smart, don't you?" Trent whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "Hiding behind a computer, pulling the strings. But you're not untouchable." Marcus didn't flinch. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice steady. Trent leaned in closer, his voice a harsh whisper. "I'm going to find out who's behind this, and when I do, they'll regret ever messing with me." Marcus watched as Trent stormed out of the library, his hands balled into fists. It was clear that Trent was unraveling. But Marcus wasn't naive. He knew that desperation made people dangerous. The chaos surrounding Trent's fall had rippled throughout Riverview High. Students whispered in hallways, speculating about who was behind the mysterious email and the leaked videos. Some thought it was a group effort, while others believed it was a disgruntled former friend. Meanwhile, the faculty tried to regain control. Assemblies were held to address cyberbullying and harassment, but the irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Where were these interventions when he and others had been victims? Still, Marcus noticed something unusual. For the first time, people like him, the quiet, overlooked students, were starting to speak up. In small ways, they began to push back against the school's toxic culture. A student called out a racist joke in class. Another stood up for a girl being body-shamed in the cafeteria. It was a start. At home, Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the growing collection of files on his laptop. He had evidence of bullying that went far beyond Trent, screenshots, videos, and messages that implicated other popular students, even some teachers. But as he scrolled through the files, Marcus felt a pang of unease. He had started this journey seeking justice, but now it felt like he was walking a fine line between righteousness and revenge. The messages from students being inspired to stand up for themselves gave him hope. But the notes left in his locker, mocking him and calling him a loser nerd, reminded him that his fight was far from over. Marcus clenched his fists. If the system wouldn't change on its own, he'd have to force it to. Marcus clenched his fists. If the system wouldn't change on its own, he'd have to force it to. Trent wasn't the kind of person to take humiliation lying down. As the days passed, his desperation turned into determination. He may have been ostracized, but he still had resources, connections, charisma, and a deep-seated need for revenge. Late one night, Trent sat in his room, scrolling through his phone. He remembered a friend of his dad's, a tech-savvy guy who had boasted about his skills in tracking down hackers. The next morning, Trent reached out. "I need help finding someone," he said, his voice low over the phone. The man laughed. "You got money, kid? This stuff doesn't come cheap." Trent's jaw tightened. "I'll pay whatever it takes." Unaware of Trent's plans, Marcus was preparing his next strike. He had compiled a comprehensive report exposing the systemic bullying at Riverview High, complete with evidence of the administration turning a blind eye. His plan was to release the report anonymously. Marcus typed the final paragraphs of his exposé. His phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You think you're untouchable? We'll see about that." Marcus's heart raced. Had Trent found out? Or was this someone else? The text threw Marcus off balance. For the first time, he felt truly vulnerable. He had always operated in the shadows, staying one step ahead of everyone. But now someone was watching him. He tried to shake it off, focusing on his plan. The report was almost ready, and he knew its release would cause an uproar. But the thought of being exposed nagged at him. That night, Marcus double-checked his security measures, encrypting his files and hiding his tracks online. But no matter how careful he was, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was closing in on him. Trent's hired tech expert worked quickly, tracing the anonymous emails and posts back to their source. While Marcus had been careful, he wasn't perfect. "It's a student," the man said, pointing to his screen. "This kid's been using the school's Wi-Fi to send everything. Smart, but not smart enough." Trent leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he saw the name. Marcus Wright. That little, Trent's voice trailed off, his anger boiling over. The next morning, Marcus walked into school with his head held high. The report was scheduled to go live that afternoon, and he felt a sense of purpose. But as he turned the corner toward his locker, he froze. Trent was waiting for him, flanked by two of his old friends. "We need to talk," Trent said, his voice low and menacing. Marcus glanced around. The hallway was unusually empty. He considered running, but Trent's friends blocked his path. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady. Trent smirked. "Oh, I think you know. You've been real busy lately, haven't you?" Marcus's heart pounded. Trent knew. Trent stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Here's how this is going to go. You're going to stop whatever this is. You're going to delete everything, and you're going to leave me alone. Got it?" Marcus met Trent's gaze, refusing to back down. "Or what?" Trent's smirk widened. "Or I'll make sure everyone knows who's really behind all this. How do you think they'll react when they find out their hero is just another bully in disguise?" Marcus's stomach churned. Trent wasn't wrong. If his identity was exposed, everything he'd built would come crashing down. But Marcus wasn't ready to give up. Marcus's mind raced as Trent's words echoed in his head. He had been so focused on exposing Trent and the culture of bullying at Riverview High. He hadn't prepared for this, a direct confrontation. For years, he had been invisible, a shadow in the crowd. But now, Trent knew who he was, and that knowledge gave him power. But Marcus wasn't about to let Trent win. Not now, not after everything. "What makes you think I'm scared of you?" Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. Trent's smirk faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of doubt. But he quickly recovered, leaning in close. "You should be. You think the people you're trying to protect will still support you when they find out you've been spying on them?" Marcus clenched his fists, resisting the urge to react. He knew Trent was trying to rattle him, but he couldn't afford to lose control. While the confrontation simmered, Riverview High was a powder keg ready to explode. The anonymous email and leaked videos had inspired students to speak out, but it had also created divisions. Some students supported the anonymous whistleblower, seeing Marcus's actions as a necessary reckoning. Others were angry, feeling betrayed by the exposure of private moments and conversations. Teachers struggled to maintain order. Classes were disrupted by arguments, and the principal called an emergency meeting to address the growing chaos. But no one knew how to fix the situation. In the midst of it all, Marcus worked in silence, finalizing his report. He knew he was walking a fine line, but he believed in his mission. Trent wasn't one to wait for things to happen. After confronting Marcus, he began spreading rumors about him, planting seeds of doubt among the students. "Marcus, right?" he said, feigning disbelief during lunch. "You mean the guy who's been spying on everyone?" "Yeah, I heard he's got files on half the school." "Creepy, right?" It didn't take long for the rumors to spread. By the end of the day, Marcus could feel the stares and hear the whispers. "Is it true?" a girl asked him in the hallway, her tone accusatory. "Have you been collecting dirt on people?" Marcus didn't respond, walking past her without a word. The weight of the rumors and the pressure of his mission began to take a toll on Marcus. At home, he barely slept, his mind consumed with the thought of what would happen if his identity was fully exposed. He had always been a private person, content to stay in the background. But now, he was at the center of a storm he had created. One evening, as he stared at his laptop, Marcus began to question everything. Was he really making a difference, or was he just another cog in the cycle of vengeance? The answer came in the form of a message from a fellow student. "Thank you. I don't know who you are, but you've given me the courage to stand up for myself. Please don't stop." Marcus closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He couldn't stop now, but Trent wasn't done. Using the information from his hired tech expert, Trent managed to obtain some of Marcus's files. He didn't have access to everything, but what he had was enough to cause damage. The next morning, copies of Marcus's files began appearing around the school. Printouts were taped to lockers, left in the cafeteria, and slipped under classroom doors. Students who had once supported the whistleblower turned against him. "Is this you?" a boy shouted at Marcus, holding up a printout of a screenshot. "You think you're better than us? You're just as bad as Trent." Marcus tried to explain, but no one wanted to listen. The school had turned into a battlefield, and he was caught in the middle. By the end of the day, Marcus was called to the principal's office. Sitting across from her, he felt the full weight of his actions crashing down on him. "Marcus," the principal said, her tone a mix of disappointment and concern. "I don't know how much of this is true, but the situation has gotten out of control. We need to get to the bottom of this." Marcus stayed silent, his mind racing. He knew that if he admitted to being behind the leaks, the consequences would be severe. But if he stayed silent, he risked losing everything he had worked for. Outside the office, Trent walked through the hallways with a renewed sense of confidence. He had managed to turn the tide against Marcus, shifting the narrative in his favor. "Looks like the hero's not so perfect after all," Trent said to his former teammates, earning a chorus of laughter. But deep down, Trent knew his victory was hollow. His reputation was still in shambles, and the scars of his humiliation remained. Sitting in the principal's office, Marcus realized something. He had started this journey thinking he could change the system by fighting from the shadows. But now, he understood that real change required more than anonymous actions. It required accountability. "I have something to say," Marcus said, breaking the silence. Marcus's decision to step forward marked a turning point in the story. The chaos at Riverview High had reached its peak, and the stage was set for a final showdown between Marcus, Trent, and the culture of bullying that had plagued the school for years. Part 4 sets the stage for the climax of the story, as Marcus faces the consequences of his actions and prepares to take a stand. Part 5 will explore the resolution, including the ultimate fates of Marcus, Trent, and the school. The atmosphere in Riverview High was thick with tension. The leaks, the rumors, and the fallout had reached a boiling point. Students, teachers, and even parents were demanding answers. But the person everyone wanted to hear from, Marcus Wright, was finally ready to speak. Sitting in the principal's office, Marcus felt an unusual calm wash over him. The fear, the doubt, and the anger that had plagued him were gone. All that remained was a sense of purpose. "I was behind the leaks," Marcus admitted, his voice steady. The principal leaned back in her chair, stunned. "Do you realize what you've done, Marcus? You've turned this school upside down." Marcus nodded. "Yes, and I'd do it again. But not because I wanted revenge." The principal raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. "I did it because this school has been failing its students for years," Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. "People like Trent have been allowed to bully and humiliate others without consequence. Teachers look the other way. Administrators sweep it under the rug. I wanted to show everyone the truth." The principal sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "The truth is messy, Marcus. And now, because of you, the entire school is in chaos." "Chaos is the first step to change," Marcus replied. The next day, the principal called for a school-wide assembly. The entire student body gathered in the gymnasium, murmuring with anticipation. Rumors swirled that the anonymous whistleblower would finally be revealed. As the principal stepped up to the podium, the room fell silent. "Over the past few weeks, Riverview High has been the center of controversy," she began. "Bullying, harassment, and a culture of silence have been brought to light in ways that have divided our community. Today, we're here to address these issues and move forward." She gestured to the side of the stage, and Marcus stepped forward. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Marcus took the microphone, his heart pounding. He scanned the faces in the crowd, some shocked, some angry, and a few, to his surprise, nodding in quiet support. "I'm Marcus Wright," he began, "and I'm the one who exposed the videos, the emails, and the truth about what's been happening in this school." The gym erupted into chaos. Voices shouted accusations, questions, and expletives. Marcus raised his hand, signaling for silence. "I know many of you are angry," he continued. "You feel betrayed, exposed, and hurt. But ask yourselves, why did it take an anonymous whistleblower for these issues to come to light? Why weren't they addressed when people like Trent were openly humiliating others? When people like me were suffering in silence?" Trent, seated near the front, stood up, his face red with anger. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Marcus met Trent's gaze, unflinching. "You're right," he said, surprising everyone. "I'm not a hero. I made mistakes. I crossed lines. But I didn't do this for power or revenge. I did it to force this school to take a hard look at itself." Marcus's words hung in the air. Slowly, the shouting subsided, replaced by murmurs of reflection. A student in the back stood up, a girl Marcus recognized from one of Trent's taunting videos. "He's right," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been bullied for years and no one did anything about it. What Marcus did was wrong, but at least he did something." Her words emboldened others. One by one, students began to speak up, sharing their own experiences with bullying and harassment. The gym became a forum for voices that had long been silenced. Trent, meanwhile, sat down, his face a mask of frustration. For the first time, he realized he was losing the battle, not to Marcus, but to the truth. In the days that followed the assembly, changes began to ripple through Riverview High. The school board launched an investigation into the administration's handling of bullying complaints. Teachers underwent training on how to recognize and address harassment. But the most significant change came from the students themselves. Inspired by Marcus's actions, flawed as they were, they began to hold each other accountable. Bullies who once acted with impunity found themselves ostracized. Victims found allies in unexpected places. Marcus, however, didn't escape unscathed. He faced disciplinary action for his role in the leaks, including suspension. But to his surprise, many students rallied behind him, starting a petition to have his suspension reduced. On his last day before the suspension began, Marcus walked through the halls with his head held high. For the first time, he felt seen, not as a victim, but as someone who had made a difference. Trent's downfall was complete. Stripped of his power and influence, he became a shadow of his former self. He tried to rebuild his reputation, but the damage was done. In a moment of rare vulnerability, He approached Marcus in the parking lot after school. "You won okay?" Trent said, his tone bitter. "You got what you wanted." Marcus shook his head. "This was never about winning, Trent. It was about doing what's right. I hope you figure that out someday." Trent didn't respond, walking away without another word. At home, Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the now empty folders on his laptop. The files were gone, deleted as part of his agreement with the school. But the impact of his actions remained. He opened his email and found a message from the girl who had spoken up at the assembly. "Thank you for standing up for us. You gave us the courage to speak out. You changed more than you realize." Marcus smiled, closing his laptop. He didn't need recognition or praise. Knowing he had made a difference was enough. They mocked him for his skin color, but he made them pay the price, ends not with vengeance but with redemption and change. Marcus's journey shows that justice isn't always clean or easy, but it's worth fighting for. And sometimes, the most powerful change starts with a single voice refusing to stay silent.